In the final months of World War II, deep in the Philippine jungle, more than 2,000 Allied prisoners of war waited, starving, skeletal, and forgotten. They had been captured years earlier when the Japanese swept through the Pacific. Their camp was called Los Baños, and by early 1945, word had reached American command that if something wasn't done soon, those prisoners would be executed. But this isn't just another war story. This is the story of a rescue so daring, so perfectly timed, that historians still call it one of the most brilliant raids in military history. The man at the heart of it all was Lieutenant Colonel Henry Mucci, a quiet, disciplined leader of the US Army's 11th Airborne Division. His orders were impossible: rescue over 2,000 prisoners from a heavily guarded Japanese camp, miles behind enemy lines, without alerting Tokyo's forces scattered around Manila. A single gunshot too soon, and every captive would be slaughtered. Mucci knew he couldn't do it alone. So he turned to the men who knew the jungle best, the Filipino guerrillas who had fought for years in silence and shadow. Together, they built a plan that read like fiction. American paratroopers would drop from the sky while guerrillas and amphibious scouts surrounded the camp. Every second mattered. Before dawn on February 23, 1945, the men of the 511th Parachute Infantry climbed into C-47s. They carried light rifles, radios, and a promise to bring their countrymen home. Below them, in the darkness, Filipino scouts crept through the grass, knives drawn, cutting phone lines and isolating the guards. The prisoners inside had no idea that salvation was already moving toward them. At exactly 7 a.m., the sky above Los Baños erupted. Parachutes opened against the pale morning light. A loudspeaker blared in English and Tagalog. "Lie down. This is your rescue." And in less than 30 minutes, the impossible became real. The paratroopers hit the ground and sprinted through the fences. Japanese sentries barely had time to fire before they were overrun. Filipino guerrillas stormed the perimeter, cutting through barbed wire, pulling prisoners to safety. Some prisoners of war were too weak to walk. Soldiers lifted them onto their backs. Others, confused and terrified, thought it was a trick until they saw the American flags painted on the soldiers' sleeves. By 7:30 a.m., the camp was burning, the prisoners free. But the hardest part was still ahead. Mucci's men had to escort 2,000 emaciated survivors through miles of enemy territory. That's when the people of the Philippines stepped forward. Local villagers, farmers and fishermen poured from their homes, bringing carts, blankets and food. They carried the weakest prisoners on their shoulders, shielding them from the sun, whispering prayers as they moved toward the lake. Waiting at the shore were amphibious tractors, LVTS, sent by the 672nd Amphibious Battalion. Under fire, they loaded every man, woman and child onto the boats. One by one, they crossed to freedom. When it was over, not a single prisoner had been lost. Out of 2,100 rescued, every single one made it home. The raid had taken just 30 minutes that saved 2,000 lives. News of the rescue barely made the headlines back home. The war was almost over, and the world was already looking toward victory in Europe. But for the men who fought that day, and for the prisoners who lived to see another sunrise, Los Baños would never be forgotten. It was proof that courage and coordination could outmatch cruelty, that even in war's darkest corners, humanity could still shine through, and that sometimes the most extraordinary heroes aren't the ones who fire the first shot, but the ones who risk everything to bring others home.